agenda. So number 1 is the call to order, welcome, and roll call. And it looks like we've got everyone except Trustee Kendall and Trustee Smith. And I knew Trustee Kendall had family in town, and I'm not sure why Trustee Smith is. And there he is. Perfect timing, Trustee Smith. Yay. And so we have everyone but Trustee Kendall, whom we knew would not be here because of family obligations. And so now if we can stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance, and if we can all begin it at the same time. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And item number 3 is to review, revise, and approve the agenda. And there are a few revisions to the agenda. And so I think the first one, is the first one 5?
Yes.
Okay. So under B, Personnel 5, the topic is titled Approve Lead PC Network Tech Position. It's on page 4 of the agenda, but actually what we will be discussing is to approve the PC Tech 2 position as opposed to lead. Is there any objection to modifying it in that fashion? And Mr. Rout will explain the difference between lead and Tech 2. And the final thing, number 10, is executive session, which is a grievance hearing, and the person involved with the grievance hearing is ill with the flu. So we were working on a date to move that grievance hearing to once he's feeling better. So that will not be on the agenda tonight. Is there any objection to that? I'm thinking none. Okay. So with those 2 modifications, are there any other requests to modify the agenda as it's set? Thanks. Seeing none, then we'll move on to approval of the minutes. And we have the regular board meeting minutes from February 14, which start at page 5 of the attachments. And I just want to make sure. Right. And so the only unusual thing that we are seeing is that on page 13, it indicates that since we had moved into executive session, there needs to be minutes taken once we move out of executive session into open session. So I took the minutes for that particular part. That's why my name appears as opposed to Elizabeth's name. But just with that explanation, are there any corrections or omissions to those minutes? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes from the regular board meeting of February 14th, 2017? Moved by Trustee Wake. Is there a second? Seconded by Trustee Dupree. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please indicate by raising your hand. And I think I see Trustee Beer's hand up, so that is unanimous as to trustees present. Now we move on to public comment and correspondence. There is written correspondence in the packet, and public comment is at this time on non-agenda items. It is a time for anyone in the community to bring anything to the board's attention of matters that fall within the jurisdiction of the school district. Since they are items that are not on the agenda, the board can't discuss them, so there won't be any discussion. But we'd love to hear from members of the public as to anything that they'd like to bring to our attention, anything that we're not going to be talking about later on the agenda. And if you have comments, and if you can come to the podium and turn the microphone on and state your name, and if you have an unusual spelling of your first or last name, please spell that for our Secretary Elizabeth Service. And then if you represent any organization, identify that organization, and we ask you to keep your comments to around 3 minutes. Any public comment? Thanks.
Hello, my name is Rhett Hoff, R-H-E-T-T, last name Hoff, H-O-F-F as in Frank. I am a Paxson Elementary parent and the president of the Paxson PTA, and I am here on behalf of the Playground Committee. We would like to express our concern about the condition of our playground field. An email was sent to Mr. McWilliams this morning, and he responded that a plan was in the works to address the field. However, we'd like to go on record with the Board of Trustees also. Due to the construction of the new wing of our school, Paxson has lost a large portion of our already very small playground. That's concentrated more use on the field. This increased usage, coupled with the irrigation being turned off throughout the summer, has left our field with little grass and in need of extensive repair. The field is full of holes, puddles, lots of slippery mud, and these all cause safety issues for our students and the community members who use the field. We would like to see our field graded and the drainage and irrigation issues addressed before resodding or reseeding, and hope the field will be ready for the upcoming school year. We understand from Mr. McWilliams that work is planned to begin in June, and we fully support that effort. Thank you for your time and consideration. I do have some pictures. I don't know if we can just leave with you guys about our field as well as the conditions of some of the other playgrounds in the area that are doing much better than ours. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment on non-agenda items? Thanks. Thank you so much. Seeing none, then we'll move on to the next item on the agenda is reports and announcements. And so at this time, we have the student trustee reports, and I see we have Brandon, Gabby, Brianna, and Adam, and no Dylan tonight. So why don't we start with Brandon from Willard, and then we'll move down the table. And thanks for being here.
All right, I just typed this up on my typewriter at home, and it is dangerously low on ink, so let's see how well I can do this. All right, over at Willard, we just had 10 students graduate, and at the start of the new trimester, we had 35 new students coming to the school. We usually do not have so few graduates to compensate for all the new students, so the small building is feeling pretty packed right now. We also just had our honors assembly where people on honor roll and high honor roll were recognized, as well as people with good attendance, and students of 6 weeks were recognized as well. Daylight savings is hitting us all pretty hard. It's like we're all confused, but don't really know why. So yeah, journalism in the school paper and everything is going a bit slow. It's probably not daylight savings' fault, but I'm going to blame that anyways. Today, our sophomore students just began the science CRT tests, and the ACTs are commencing on April 19th. Today through Thursday this week, we are actually starting work with the CTA architects about the design of the new Willard building. They will be consulting teachers and staff members as well as students to try and achieve the best design that they can. We also just got 2 new cameras installed at the building on the 2nd floor so that we can better monitor who's coming in and going out of the building, because before we had no way of knowing due to the design of the building. One of the art classes is starting up a new native plant mural on the Bitterroot Spur Trail, and it's expected to take them the whole trimester to complete it. And if I'm not mistaken, there's actually going to be an art show at the Missoula Art Museum on April 6th that'll feature some of the student art, and I think that's pretty cool. Recently, we had some students go on a field trip to Sealy Lake where they went cross-country skiing for the day. I've actually never skied before in my life, so I didn't go, and I don't know, I guess I didn't really understand the appeal. Wasn't a joke, but okay. 3 documentary filmmakers recently came to Willard to talk about their films to the students. And Willard teachers Carolyn and Annika have decided to set up a new class this trimester, and this class is actually about career choices in film. And in that class, they've actually teamed up with the Roxy to show students how to analyze film and also showing them all the different career choices in film. Sometime during the trimester, they're also going to make their own short film to better learn about lighting and direction and all that. And I just think that's wonderful. And lastly, I lent money to my friend Nancy Stebbins, and she still owes me $8. I just thought I'd mention that. It's a small school, so I can get away with it. Actually, I think that's it.
thank you for that interesting and wonderful report. And Gabby, what's going on at Hellgate?
Good evening. I hope everyone is as excited as I am about the fast approaching spring break, because the Hellgate student body is definitely anticipating the break. With that, our theater department just wrapped up their production of Wizard of Oz, written by one of our own staff members, Laramie Dean, which is the Hellgate's drama teacher. Last week, Hellgate hosted the annual AA Band Festival on Monday and Tuesday. Even band families took a part in hosting this event by opening their homes to the Flathead students that were in Missoula. Then, on the following day, the Chevys and Lewis and Clark had their peace concert, and on Thursday, our boys basketball team left for state. Unfortunately, we did not place, but it was still a great end to our great season. Now to this week. Monday, we were on the MBI schedule on Monday, which kind of threw us off with daylight savings times and the different schedule, but it's okay. And also on Monday, we had our choir concert. On Thursday, our jazz band, this week on Thursday, our jazz band will be participating at the Jazz Festival. That's all for now, and thank you.
All right, so just an update, our drama department went to Kinky Boots, the musical in Spokane last Sunday, and I went on that trip, and it was amazing. And that got us really excited for our upcoming spring musical, All Shook Up, and performances for that are April 19th through the 22nd. 35 members of our band are going to New Orleans with band director Jesse Docknall for a jazz study tour over spring break. Big Sky students will join Hellgate in traveling to Art Interscholastics at the beginning of April, and that's being held in Hardin. And Aries' annual Dana Gallery reading is coming up on April 6th, and so be sure to attend that for live jazz, delectable hors d'oeuvres, and a raffle, and then also international poetry reading from the 2017 edition of Airy International. And then 10 students are currently in Peru with one of our Spanish teachers, Brad Gibbs, for a Peruvian heritage tour.
Some more stuff. So Big Sky has a choir concert on Wednesday. And then first Friday, April 7th, the Autism Awareness Photo Project, which will be displayed at the Hub. And this project was coordinated between Big Sky Flagship and our Special Education Department to highlight diversity at Big Sky. And we will actually be hanging our focal art piece at the end of spring break to draw people into the Hub on that first Friday. Last week, Health Science Academy sophomores and juniors went to Montana Tech to tour the medical facilities, and the HSA freshmen went to the Capitol building and sat in on the discussion of House bills, and they also met Governor Bullock. And then 22 FFA students are going to state convention in Great Falls over spring break. Last weekend in Corvallis, they won all 8 district competitions, and that's all for Big Sky.
Thanks, and as you know, we would love if you can stay, but given the combination of spring break and deadlines and daylight savings time, feel free to leave now if this is a good opportunity, and stay as long as you can if you can stay for a little bit longer. Thank you so much for being here. And with that, we move on to 6B, which is announcements from Superintendent Thane.
Thank you. A number of items are noted on page 15 in the agenda, and for the viewing audience, I would like to highlight some important dates. First of all, parent-teacher conferences are being conducted in our K-8 buildings this week. A number of buildings actually are conferencing this evening, and because we do schedule evening conference sessions to accommodate parent schedules, there will be no school on Friday for K-8 students, and actually they dismiss early on Thursday also. So they get a jump start on spring break. High school parent-teacher conferences are the week of April 4th to 7th. And again, we will have evening conferences, so high school students will not be in session Friday, April 7th. As was referenced in the high school students' reports, spring break is March 20th to 24th, so next week, most of the buildings will be closed, but the administrative offices will remain open. A couple really important dates coming up. Saturday, April 1st is the Native Youth Powwow, and this year it'll be held at Sentinel High School, so a new venue, and we're excited to have the opportunity to celebrate with our Native students and families. On Monday, April 24th, we will have a professional development day, and we'll have professional development activities for all schools.
We will have our second annual meeting, school board meeting at Sealy Swan High School. That's scheduled for Tuesday, April 25th. So the first regular meeting in April will be in this facility, but we will go to Sealy for the second meeting. And of course, we have a regular board meeting scheduled for March 28th. And as you know, the MEA and MCPS are engaged in a collaboration, and we've been officially accepted. It's with regard to recruitment, retention, and mentoring new teachers. And unfortunately, that means two of us here will be gone to San Francisco the night of March 28th for some professional development training associated with our participation. So I'll be calling into the board meeting that night, but we'll try and keep it a relatively light agenda. There are a number of bills that we continue to follow in the legislature. One of real significance for us is Senate Bill 307, which would allow us to have a permissive levy to take care of facility needs. So it's like a building reserve without the necessity of going out for a full vote in the public. However, that will compel us to do some new noticing of the public via resolution. And so Pat, for March 28th's board meeting, will have a number of resolutions related to all the permissive levies that will come before the board for review. We're anticipating that bill will pass, so we're going to meet the requirements as we understand them to be in 2 weeks. There's been a lot of discussion about the fact that the legislature did not address special education funding, and in fact, all the bills, that were designed to do so missed the transmittal deadline. However, I was in Helena yesterday, and what essentially is happening is House Bill 390 is a bill that would fund broadband construction in school districts. It also may ultimately contain some career and tech ed money. And the word in Helena is that that bill will likely become the vehicle for all things education related as the session draws to a close. So the title of that bill was simply to generally revise school finance. And they will likely lump anything and everything that they want to accomplish at the 11th hour into that bill. So special education funding is not necessarily off the table, but we don't have a specific bill identified for special ed funding, and we continue to communicate our needs in that regard. I am sure you're all aware that there is a special election to elect a U.S. House of Representatives member scheduled for May 25th. There's still discussion at the legislature whether that will be an all-male election or whether we'll have traditional polling places. A number of our buildings that are traditionally used as polling places are already booked for that evening. Number one, it's a Thursday instead of a Tuesday. And number two, we're approaching year end, and a number of our year-end concerts have been scheduled in buildings for those dates. So we have had communication with the elections office, and they understand that those facilities may not be available, and we would have to seek alternates if there are to be walk-in polling places on that date. You heard in reference, or two of the student trustees referenced daylight savings time. There's actually a bill before the legislature that would contemplate Montana no longer switching to daylight savings time. And it sounds relatively innocuous, but there has been concern raised that particularly in fall as well as early spring, if we don't go to daylight savings time, we could have some issues with our after-school activities, especially athletics. So in the fall with soccer and with sub-varsity football, those late dates would cause us then to schedule our games earlier and students to miss additional class time for travel or for game participation if we don't have the extra hour of daylight. So again, something that seemed relatively simple has some potentially unintended consequences, and so we're monitoring that one very closely. Lastly, and this is a little bit outside of normal protocol, I would just like to acknowledge Chelsea Davis sitting in the back of the room. Chelsea's been our education beat reporter for quite a time, and she's done an excellent job and has been a great student of all things education related in Missoula. Unfortunately, well, maybe not unfortunately for us, but maybe fortunately for Chelsea, she's accepted a job at her alma mater as communications director in the research department. So she'll be moving to Iowa State, and her last day is actually next week, March 24th. So again, thank you for all your work to help the community be informed, Chelsea. And that concludes my report.
thank you. And thank you to Chelsea. And now it is time for 6C, items from trustees. Do any trustees have any items they'd like to bring to our attention? Sure.
I just wanted to give kudos to the Hellgate High School Drama Department. I went with my granddaughter, who is a senior at Big Sky, to go see Wizard of Oz, which is my all-time favorite. I watch it every time it's on TV. But to go and see it produced by a student who had put it together, it was awesome. And if you guys haven't gone to any of the drama productions that they have, you should go. I'm going to Big Sky because I love Elvis, and I'm all excited about All Shook Up.
Any other announcements from trustees? Well, thank you. See none, we'll move on to old business. So it's 7A1, which is to approve the second reading of Board Policy 7332, which is advertising in schools. And Pat, if you want to just remind us what this is about. And it looks like no public comment has been received, and it's a pretty narrow area where it is describing advertising in schools. It's not general advertising all over the school building, right?
That's correct. So it's limited in scope, and the policy contemplates some advertising principally at the stadium and the gyms as a means of enhancing revenue generation.
Any questions for Pat? This is coming before the board on second reading, which means we've had it presented once, we've discussed it once. Pat did a pretty exhaustive explanation as to why it was under consideration at the committee level, and then once the committees, we revised our structure so committees didn't exist, it was brought to the full board for first reading, and we put it out for public comment to see if anyone had any comments about the policy, and we apparently received none. So any questions for Pat before I entertain a motion, and then after the motion, we would have discussion? Is that a question?
I think so.
Okay.
Did we not agree to change this word from required to requested on the second page?
There was a modification.
Diane, or Trustee Lorenzen, could you identify which paragraph we're talking about?
It's in the last paragraph. It says students shall not be required to complete any survey. We talked about changing that to students shall not be requested to complete any survey. And that's in our minutes that we just approved.
Right,
That's correct.
that's correct. So I would entertain a motion that we adopt or approve the revision of Board Policy 7332 with the correction as reflected in the minutes from the last meeting to change that one term. And it's moved by Trustee Wake. Is there a second? Seconded by Trustee Smith. Now time for any board discussion. Trustee Smith?
I just want to say I'm totally in support of this. I think it's important that we try and find as much sources of revenue as we can, because we're not going to get any more from the state, that's for sure. I also appreciate that that we're moving this more from the board to the superintendent and his designee to deal with the everyday nitty-gritty of this, so that not everything has to come to the board. But I'm glad to see this. Thanks.
Trustee?
I would just add to what Trustee Smith just said, that I think the reason why I am actually supportive of this policy is that it's pretty strong in terms of what kinds of advertisements can and cannot be part of an educational environment, even when we're talking about things like billboards and sports signs and that sort of thing. It's, moving toward a commercial-free environment is a value that many educators hold, and I think keeping our children's learning environments commercial-free is increasingly difficult as they're accessing the internet, and many advertisements are placed in such a way that children are not even aware that they are being exposed to advertising. So while I do see that we do need to be open to sources of revenue, we need to be very, very vigilant about advertising in our schools. And I think this policy strikes a good balance.
Any other board discussion? Seeing none, I'll just echo, I agree with what Trustee Decker and Trustee Smith said. It's hard to strike a balance, but I appreciate all the diligent work, especially Pat and your committee. What you had worked very diligently at striking that balance, so thank you for all that hard work. So any public comment? Seeing none, then we have a second in motion, so all trustees in favor of approving Board Policy 37332, which describes advertising, or addresses advertising in schools, please indicate by raising your hand. And that's unanimous as to all trustees present. Thank you so much. And then we move on to new business, 8A1, which is Smart Schools 2020. Superintendent Thane, do you want to start out the discussion?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And we'll turn it over to Burley for the bulk of the report in just a minute, but I did want to make sure that we formally notice that the Missoula College property, which is located directly south of us, 6.2 acres with 2 buildings and currently 9 modular buildings sitting on it, will revert back to Missoula County Public Schools this summer. The Montana Board of Regents unanimously approved Friday the motion to make that transfer official. I appreciate especially the work of Vice President for Finance Mike Reed and the Facilities Director Kevin Krebsbach at the university who helped facilitate that process. And it's been a somewhat long process. And just a little bit of history, those buildings were actually built by Missoula County High School District. Back in the 60s and 70s, the vocational education program was a function of the high school district. Then in the 1980s, that transitioned to the Montana University system, and at that time, we conveyed that property as well as some acreage out on South Avenue next to our agriculture center that's used by the Missoula College to the university system for $10. Subsequent to that, we actually had a clause in the agreement that if they vacated it within a certain period of time, it would revert back to us. That clause long ago expired. However, as we became aware certainly that the new Missoula College was going to be a reality, we reinitiated conversation. I think the important elements are that the facilities are showing a little bit of their age. So we have Holting group looking at it right now in terms of mechanical, electrical, plumbing to see what needs there might be. And at some point, we'll likely come before the board to consider what work might need to be done in order for us to occupy the facility. But we're really excited to have it back. I would anticipate Missoula College beginning to move out the 3rd week in May. They'll teach their summer session in their new facility. The date of transition will likely be June 30, the end of the fiscal year. We may actually have access to the site a little earlier than that. We will have to have some conversation about the potential use of at least some of that space as swing space for Washington School students during their construction project. Ultimately, what we would like to see happen is that the administrative building functions and the business building functions actually be unified in a single facility, possibly along with the Fine Arts Department. And so we'll be taking a look at the footprint of those buildings and what the potential will be for us. But we're really excited to have that coming back into Missoula County Public Schools. And with that.
And Burley, an update on other things going on with Smart Schools 2020?
Yeah, I apologize. I was going to actually do a PowerPoint tonight, but there's a lot here, so it made it quicker just to kind of write it down. Some of it will be reviewed, but I just kind of want you to understand how busy we're going to be this summer, as if you guys don't already know. But we have some roofing projects going on at Sentinel, Porter, and Hawthorne. Those 3 projects will kick off as soon as school is out, and we'll be ready for the fall school year. We're upgrading the mechanical system at Jefferson to a hot water boiler system and infrastructure. That will also start about a week after school is out. We're going to give about a week for Jefferson staff to kind of get situated and out of there, ready to move into their new building at Franklin. Construction projects going on this summer. Some are wrapping up, some are just starting, but we have Lowell and Franklin, as we all know, continuing. We'll see Cold Springs break ground, Russell should break some ground, Washington, Hellgate, And hopefully with the DEQ, we'll approve the permit soon for VOAG. We'll see the VOAG break ground. And then this April, we have the stadium track that we need to complete. We have closed the stadium down for meets for the month of April to hopefully see some good weather. So pray for good weather there. Lots of meetings wrapping up. We've had a lot over the last few weeks. We've had Sentinel Architects selected, which we have in an agenda item later on in the board meeting. We have GCCM interviews tomorrow for Cold Springs. And then the end of March and early April, we have GCCM interviews and RFQs for Washington Middle School. In mid-April, we have GCCM for Willard. And in May, we have GCCM for Russell. So lots of meetings coming down the pipe. We have lots of logistics going on with moves for the summer. We're going to have moves in Lowell, Franklin, moving them back home. In Russell, Washington, Hellgate, we have moves in all of them. So a lot of logistics being where we're going to put that stuff. We've been purging, trying to get rid of some equipment or some old or garbage, that kind of stuff. And of course, we'll do some district sales. This week we had a meeting, as Karen Allen puts it, a back to home meeting for Lowell and Franklin, or going home meeting back for Franklin and Lowell. And we met with LPW, who is also helping us out with our FF&E package, our furniture, fixtures, and equipment. We have found that we're ready to put that out for RFP. We know we haven't brought that to the board yet, but we will be looking at putting that out this week. And then we want to bring that back to you guys at the next board meeting once those numbers come in for approval from you guys. It was a pretty tight time frame, and we'll be making it right towards the end where we can have a couple weeks there for the FF&E to be installed, put together, that kind of thing. So it's working out really tight, but it's a good window. We have EIT meetings. The first EIT meeting at Willard today went really well. It's a 3-day meeting, so we had a meeting today, we have a meeting tomorrow, and we have a meeting on Thursday. And then we'll meet again back after spring break, and then a couple weeks after that to really get aggressive schedule going for Willard, so that we're being optimistic, but we're hoping we'll have Willard, the new Willard, up and running in August of next year. That's kind of the tentative date. Don't hold me to that one yet, but that's us being optimistic. Sentinel High School will start very soon once tonight's board agenda is approved. And we see that project moving along very quickly as well. We had a meeting in Washington this last Monday, and we should be, like I said, getting out for GCCM here shortly on that project. Hellgate's, again, currently under some moves, getting ready for spring break. There'll be some work done over spring break to get us ready to start building the kitchen for next school year. That project won't let up. So once we start in there this spring break, you'll start seeing construction trailers and site, Jackson Construction moving in on that site right around spring break, and they'll be there for the next 14, 18 months, somewhere in there. So lots of great things happening. Safety and security, we're still working on that right now. We should have Rattlesnake Packs in Charlotte and Jefferson up and running on card access and security systems here within the next 2 to 3 weeks. And the next go-around will be Sealy, Hellgate, Lowell, and Franklin. So be happy to answer any questions.
Well, before any questions, the world of education and construction are filled with acronyms. So can you remind everyone who doesn't know what a GCCM is, what that term describes? Because we know we're picking architects, but what is a GCCM and what's an EIT?
Yeah, thanks. I sometimes take that for granted. I apologize. GCCM is construction, or general contractor construction manager. It's an alternative project delivery where we bring them on, we bring a general contractor on as part of the team, part of the budgeting process, looking at how we can reduce costs with materials, timelines, that sort of stuff. So they become an integral part of our team rather than just a hired contractor to go build us a facility. EIT is Education Innovative Team. Every building had one 2.5 years ago now. We started off with every facility having a Education Innovative Team to kind of put start the bond, get it on the map, start doing some concepts, some of the needs for those facilities. So we've brought those EITs back to work with the design team as a design team and look at what the current needs are of the select facilities in question. So they're integral in making sure that our buildings are what our needs are met for the educational purposes.
And with those explanations, are there any questions for Burley or any comments? Trustee Smith?
I was just wondering if you could comment on with all this work going on, not only school, but everybody else building in the city of Missoula and the state of Montana, how is that affecting the prices we're paying for the GCCMs and for the contractors in general? And B, are we having to are we getting more out of locale, out of Missoula, out of state people bidding on these?
Well, currently, the only one we've had out for bid recently is our roof work, and we've been seeing some good numbers come in from that. We feel like we're taking these out in a good time frame right now, and we're hoping to see some good numbers in our bid packs that'll be coming out here in April, May for a lot of these projects to get us going in the summer. But yeah, we'll kind of have to see. There is a lot of work going on, and we're hopeful that we'll get great numbers based off of our aggressive timeline, trying to get as many projects as we can, that we'll see better numbers this year than we will next year, so if we were to wait. But we are very aggressive with this, and we're hoping we're going to see some aggressive numbers as well.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Trustee Decker?
Thanks. Burley, can you just say a little bit about what the involvement of the EITs or instructional coaches or sort of the education component when it comes to picking furnishings for the classrooms? What kind of seating, variable seating, different types, different varieties that go with that sort of more flexible approach to using the classroom that we've talked about?
Yeah, so I can use a couple examples. One was Paxton. Paxton had some kindergarten and first grade teachers that were heavily involved in the selection of their FF&E. They looked at furniture that was on casters. They looked at tables that could actually join, where you could have 5 or 6 people work together, or it could work individually where you can pull them apart. It's really been a neat process, and walking through Paxton immediately right after they got that equipment, you could see a huge difference in what those kids were able to do in those classrooms. The classrooms at Paxton are a little smaller than their typical classrooms, and this furniture actually helps it make that classroom as effective, if not more, with the furniture they have. Lowell and Franklin, they're a lot bigger package, but looking at it this week with Brian and Amy, the principals, you looked at cubbies. So instead of lockers, we're doing cubbies, and those are actually on casters. They can be used for room dividers. They can be moved around the room to make any other teacher, because as teachers move around, it can make that room more adaptable. The furniture's the same way. We're seeing tables that can fit together. We're seeing chairs there's actually some chairs that are kind of rockers that kind of help with the attention span of some kids. It kind of keeps their body moving. So there's a lot of things that come into play with that. And I also know they, in their breakout space, are looking at those little, Karen, if you know the name of them, they're like these little, their seats are about this big, and they're kind of skinny down to the bottom, and they can wobble around and rock and roll, and it's really a neat thing. So a lot of the things we're taking into consideration when we're looking at our furniture.
Any other questions for Burley? Trustee McDonald?
I would like to know where I could get one of those in the big girl thing, the little, it looks like a mushroom, and it looks like something nice for the core.
Any other questions for Burley or Superintendent Thane, or any comments? Seeing none, this is an information-only item, but if anyone has any comments? Any public comment? Trustee Guest, or not trustee Guest? Ms. Guest.
I just wanted to add to that question that you posed. The instructional coaches from Teaching and Learning are doing a lot of work with technology. So helping to work with some of the teacher leaders to identify what kind of technology is going to be in the classroom and how that'll help enhance instruction and enhance student achievement. So that's an additional piece to what Burley said.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Well, thanks. And now we move on to 8A2, which is grant permission to seek quotes for student and staff device replacements. I understand Pat's going to give us the background. There is background information provided, and the recommendation is that the trustees grant permission to seek quotes for student and staff device replacements. Looks like there's a number looking to be replaced.
Yep, thank you. So this is an annual item because on an annual basis, we'll be looking to replace devices both for staff and for students in the classroom. And what we began doing a few years ago is looking through the WISCA and NASPO bidding opportunities through the state. And we've been able to get good prices in that manner. So as we've described in the background section, we'll identify and provide specs to the selected companies that are part of the WISCA and NASPO purchasing program, and we'll coordinate and bring back to the board the prices that we recommend for selection. The ISC department will assist with developing the recommendation, and we'll review the proposals. And this is a tech fund purchase.
Any questions for Pat? Trustee Smith?
I understand these, if these are replacements, what happens to the old ones? Are they that bad? I mean, I still have an iPad 1 at home that works. I do.
So do I. They are, there's more need than there will be purchase, is what I would say. And so we're making the purchases against those in the most need as delineated by the schools. So the schools participate with the tech department in identifying those computers with the most immediate need for replacement, and how that can work in the schools is if you're looking at different departments having greater need for greater powered machines, and so sometimes those are more costly, and there'll be planned replacement for those machines. So yeah, these will be old machines. The ones historically, what we've done with the old machines, because of the cost and challenging of wiping them has been to recycle them. Right. And but Hatton talked a little bit with the board about the concept of recycling and reusing and reinstituting for student use of machines. And I think that's still in the works.
Yeah, that was my other question, thanks.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Pat? I have one question, Pat. Remind me that WISCA NASPO bidding process it's to our advantage because it's a group bidding process, so we can get better prices because it's a conglomerate of different schools looking for pricing?
Exactly, and it's regionally based, and the state of Montana procurement office has to participate and sign contracts to participate, and then we would enter into agreements based upon the state contracts, and exactly the prices and the vendors who offer those prices have been very good. And some are local. I mean, it's not that it's not.
Any other questions for Pat? So there's a recommendation that the trustees grant permission to seek quotes for student and staff device replacements. Is there a motion to do so? Moved by trustee Lorenzen. Is there a second? Seconded by trustee Wake. Is there any board discussion? Seeing none, is there any public comment on this topic? Seeing none, then all trustees in favor of recommending, or in favor of granting permission to the administration to seek quotes for student and staff device replacements, please indicate by raising your hand. And that's unanimous as to all trustees present. Elizabeth, thank you. Then we move on to somewhat related item, which is to grant permission to bid internet services, and the recommendation is that the trustees grant permission to issue a request for proposals for internet services to begin July 1st for the speeds and terms listed. There's a little bit of a lengthier background explanation as to what this entails. Pat, is there a good way to summarize it for everybody who doesn't have that background information in front of them?
Sure. So this is a routine item. We'll enter into contracts for internet services from 3 to 5 years, and in this case, we'll ask for pricing from 12 months to 60 months. And process is somewhat formal in the sense that we'll do an RFP, but we'll also submit the RFP through the E-rate administration and the board and libraries, the organization. So the federal program that reimburses schools for internet services, the E-rate reimbursement. So what we'll be asking for is pricing for speeds of varying levels. We're currently at 400 megabytes per second, and we know that we can utilize greater speeds than that. So we'll be at least looking at minimums of 1 gigabyte and then in increments of a gigabyte for pricing purposes, and the ability within the contract to bump those by 500 megabytes per second during the term of the contract. So looking forward to getting good pricing. We have seen that the pricing is improved even with the increased speed. The schools are certainly going up in demand for speed. And so I think this is the first time that we've gone out in about 3 years. So.
Any questions for Pat? I have one question, Pat. In the background information, it indicates that historically we've entered into agreements with 2 vendors just in case one vendor goes down, but now that E-rate won't, I guess, refund for a second vendor, is there any concern about not having a redundancy in the system?
I'd say yes. I think that there are some benefits with the old system in the sense that we didn't over-purchase our speed. So instead we utilized 2 vendors, as you mentioned, and have the ability to, through switching, to bump to the highest, or the service provider who could provide the highest and greatest level of service. E-rate reimburses about 60%, and so they've come back to the district and said 1 provider, and so which is, I think, a bit unfortunate. And so, given the level of financing that they do provide, we're going to go that direction and look at 1 service provider. But I do think it's really a compliance with a rule that may not be the best service. So.
Any other questions for Pat? See no other questions. Is there a motion to grant permission to issue a request for proposals for internet services to begin July 1st, 2017 for the speeds and terms limited, which I understand is anywhere between 12 and 60 months?
That's correct.
Okay. And is that a motion, Trustee Smith? Seconded by Trustee Breakstead. Is there any board discussion? Seeing none, is there any public comment? Seeing none, that all trustees in favor of granting permission to issue the request for proposals for internet services to begin July 1st, 2017 under the terms as for speeds and terms listed, please indicate by raising your hand. And that is unanimous as to all trustees present. And now we move along. We're granting permission to bid a lot of things tonight. So we're on to 8A4, which is to grant permission to bid warehouse supplies. This is also something I think we see on a regular basis. The recommendation is that the trustees grant permission to bid warehouse supplies. This is things like custodial supplies, office and instructional supplies. Anything unusual about this request, Pat?
It's lots of smaller dollar items, dollar value items. It's a very time-consuming process, so I appreciate Dan Parrish and his staff working through this process. They spend a lot of time doing so, and it's beneficial because we'll get good pricing for the year, but it's a little bit of an arduous process.
Any questions for Pat before a motion? Is there a motion to grant permission to bid the warehouse supplies? Moved by Trustee Wake. Is there a second? Second by Trustee Lorenzen. Is there any board discussion? I'll just say thanks to Pat, or to Dan and his staff for doing this. Any public comment on this? Seeing none, all trustees in favor of granting permission to bid the warehouse supplies, please indicate by raising your hand. And that's unanimous to all trustees present, except Trustee Breakstead has stepped out of the room, so he's absent for this vote. And then we move on to 5, which is to authorize engagement of Sentinel High School architect selection. And it looks like the administration is recommending that the trustees authorize the engagement of MMW Architects to assist in the programming, planning, design, and construction administration for the construction and renovation of Sentinel High School, subject to successful negotiations of a contract. And so Burley, do you want to fill us in on the process that was followed to reach this recommendation? And I'm sure many trustees are familiar with it, but in case anyone who's watching or listening isn't, just a little bit of background.
Yeah, thanks. First, I want to thank committee members Julie Robitaille, Ted Fuller, Superintendent Thane, and Dave Rott for participating on this committee. It's a time-consuming effort, as some of you may know. The process is, the first thing we do is we screen out the request for qualifications, or RFQs, and that tends to be a time-consuming process, but a great process. And then from there, we narrow down up to 4 firms to interview, and we bring those 4 firms back and interview them. Then we score them and select the firm that we feel is appropriate for the project. In this case, we selected MMW to do the Sentinel project. We've worked with MMW on the Hellgate project as well, and we're very excited about this project. And I'd like to thank Kent Means and Don MacArthur for coming tonight from MMW, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Any questions for Burley before we entertain a motion? Seeing none, then is there a motion that we authorize the engagement of MMW Architects to assist in the construction and renovation of Sentinel High School, subject to successful negotiations? Moved by Trustee Wake. Is there seconded by Trustee Smith? Is there any board discussion? Trustee Smith?
I guess I just want to say thanks for coming back and going through this arduous process again. You guys are nuts. Appreciate it. Good work on Hellgate. Keep it up.
Any other board discussion or comments? Seeing none, any public comment? If you have anything you'd want to tell us about the project? No, not at this point? No reason to do so. Any other public comment? Seeing none, then all trustees in favor of authorizing the engagement of MMW Architects to assist in the various aspects of the construction and renovation of Sentinel High School, subject to successful negotiation of contract, please indicate by raising your hand. And all trustees except Trustee Smith have voted yes, and Trustee Smith abstains from the vote. Then we move on to personnel negotiation policy items, and so feel free to leave, but thank you for being here. Pardon? Oh, the scoreboard. One more thing. Thank you for catching that. So on to 6, which is to approve selection of the vendor for the Missoula County Stadium scoreboard. And the recommendation is that we authorize the engagement of Daktronics to supply and install a new scoreboard at the Missoula County Stadium, subject to successful negotiations of contract. And the background information kind of summarizes the process that we've followed up until this point. Burley, is there anything that is important to point out about that process?
Yeah, just to kind of reiterate kind of what it says, I just want to make sure everybody understands. We use the Montana Cooperative Services through the MTSBA. We looked at Daktronics is a vendor on that. It's the only vendor in the state of Montana, but we did go outside and get another bid, and it was quite a bit more than what Daktronics could provide us using that co-op. So we felt like that was the best route to go. This would this scoreboard would do football and track. It would have a like a graphic screen on it where I meant to put in the board packet a drawing of it. They actually did a schematic of it, which is kind of neat, but I apologize I didn't get that in. But it's the top will show scores and times for track, and they'll also be able to do like some graphics where maybe you have a touchdown flash on the screen. You can use it for advertising, so you could actually put a company's name in there and say, that touchdown is sponsored by whatever. That's what we chose to do with it. There's also being on the bottom part of the scoreboard, there'll be a 24-inch by 28 feet, I believe, which is the width of the scoreboard, or the length of the scoreboard, width of it, sorry. So that we could add more advertising in there, just on the bottom section of it. So it gives us the opportunity to to do advertising off that scoreboard as well.
Any questions for Burley? Seeing none, then is there a motion to authorize the engagement of Daktronics to supply and install the new scoreboard at the Missoula County Stadium, subject to successful negotiations of a contract? Moved by trustee Wake and seconded by trustee Lorenzen. Is there any board discussion? I think it's really cool that they'll be able to see track like splits and times. That's really a nice addition to it all. So, any other comments? Trustee Smith?
It's not that important, but do we have a schedule for this? Is that going to make it in time for anything this spring? You just plug it in, right?
Actually, they are shooting for an April 20th date is our hope. We're optimistic that, yes. So we will see, I have no doubt we'll see it by the end of May, for sure.
Thanks.
Any other comments or discussion? And we have a seconded motion, Elizabeth? Okay. So all trustees in favor of authorizing the engagement of Daktronics to supply and install the new scoreboard at Missoula County Stadium, subject to successful negotiations of contract, please indicate by raising your hand. And that is all trustees present. And now we move on to B1, which is personnel negotiations and policy. And one is to approve the personnel report that is found on page 21. This is an item that we see on a monthly basis. The routine personnel report reflects the current requests for personnel to be hired, leaves to be granted, retirements, and resignations. And it looks like, I'm assuming this is for this past month.
Correct.
Correct. It just doesn't reflect that in the background information. And so, any questions for Dave before I entertain a motion? Then is there a motion that the trustees approve the items on the provided personnel report? Moved by trustee Wake, seconded by trustee Lorenzen. And for board discussion, we don't discuss particular individuals in the report, but if you have any general comments on the report, it would be time to have those comments now. Seeing none, any public comment? Seeing none, then all trustees in favor of approving the items on the personnel report, please indicate by raising your hand. And that's unanimous as to all trustees present. Then we move on to B2, which is to approve cost-neutral sabbatical leaves. And the administration recommends that the trustees authorize the cost of neutral sabbatical leave for 3 secondary applicants recommended by the Sabbatical Review Committee. And Dave, if you want to kind of remind us generally how sabbaticals work, and then more specifically as to these 3, and certainly I know that we're hoping at some point we get to sabbaticals that don't necessarily have to be cost neutral. But
You bet. As you recall, a teacher that's been in the district for 7 years can apply for a sabbatical under the contract, and we grant them for study, travel, research, and any other professionally advantageous activity. So the teachers submitted those to us in February. Then we have a sabbatical committee that's comprised of 3 teachers, 2 administrators, myself, and Melanie Charlson, and the MEA president. We review those to look at the different criteria. Do they meet the needs of the district? What will they bring back? This year we had 4 applications. However, I would note that 2 of them have actually withdrawn. So since this came out, we are not looking to approve 3, we're looking to approve 2. One would be a full year sabbatical, and the other applicant would be for a semester. The 2 that were then approved are doing that very thing. I mean, they're literally, they were studying, they're traveling, they're doing research, they're doing all of those. The 2 teachers that have applied are doing some international travel with just a host of activities they're going to do throughout the year, which I think will be pretty exciting. I think, as you recall, last fall, the people we had previously awarded sabbaticals did come and actually do a presentation to the school board, and we would expect that these teachers would do the exact same thing.
any questions for Dave before I entertain a motion? Seeing none, then is there, making sure that's what level it is, are these both high school teachers?
Yes, so
Okay.
one would be for a full year and one would be for the spring semester.
So with the modification that it is to approve the cost-neutral sabbatical leaves for 2 secondary applicants that were recommended by the Sabbatical Review Committee, is there a motion to do so? Moved by trustee Decker and seconded by trustee Newbold. Is there any board discussion? I'll just throw out that I really appreciated on the 2 occasions that the teachers who had gone on sabbaticals in the past came back and told us what they were doing, because it was actually pretty amazing what they were doing and what they brought back to the classroom because of those experiences, and actually what they were doing even while they were away and still interacting with their classes. It's pretty amazing. So, any other comments? Any public comment on this? Seeing none, then all trustees in favor of authorizing the cost of the neutral sabbatical leaves for the 2 secondary applicants, please indicate by raising your hand. And that's all trustees present. Then we move on to B3, which is to approve wage and salary increases for nurses. And the recommendation is that the trustees approve a 2% wage salary increase for nurses retroactive to July 1st. And it looks like we're trying to capture some of the smaller populations of employees at this point?
And that's precisely right. We have, this is actually the last small group that we have. We have 5 registered nurses in the district, and the 2% increase proposal is exactly what all of the other, the certified and other groups have negotiated. So we're hoping to do the same with them, retroactive to the beginning of the year, to recognize their contributions.
Any questions for Dave? Is there a motion to approve a 2% wage and salary increase for the nurses retroactive to July 1st of last year, 2016? Moved by trustee Wake and seconded by trustee Bragstad. Is there any board discussion? I'll just throw out, thank you for capturing all of the various bargaining units, Dave. We really appreciate all your work in this area.
Thank you.
Any other board comment? Any public comment? Seeing none, all trustees in favor of approving the 2% wage and salary increase for nurses retroactive to July 1st of last year, please indicate by raising your hand. And that's all trustees present. And then, I jumped the gun, there's one more group. 4 is to approve wage and salary increase for seasonal food site servers, and this is elementary only, it looks like. So the recommendation is that the trustees approve the hourly increase to $9.50 for seasonal food site servers. And this looks like it's summer servers for...
It is. It's actually one of those anomalies we were looking at. We have the seasonal summer rates for all of the employees, and for some reason we have most of the groups at $9.50 or above. The $9.41 for the site service is just an odd amount, so we wanted to make it the exact same as the other groups, the summer seasonal groups, at $9.50.
Any questions for Dave? Trustee Lorenzen?
I guess just for interest, how many people do we employ in this position, and about how many hours a day do they work?
It's pretty minimal. I can actually tell you, I actually ran that number. The 9-cent increase per hour, last year we had 787 total hours worked by the employees there, so the total cost to the district would be about $83. Actually, $83.07.
Well, thanks to having that attention to detail. Any other board discussion? Or questions, rather? So is there a motion by an elementary trustee that we approve the hourly increase from $9.41 to $9.50 per hour for the seasonal food site servers? Is there a motion? Moved by trustee Lorenzen and seconded by trustee Decker. Any discussion? Any board or public comment? Seeing none, then all elementary trustees in favor of approving the hourly increase to $9.50 for seasonal food site servers, please indicate by raising your hand. And that is all elementary trustees present. And then we move on to 5, which is the modified agenda item, which is to approve the PC Network Tech 2 position. And the recommendation is that we approve the reclassification of one PC Network Tech position to 1 instead of and we'll cross out lead, and it will read PC Network Tech 2 positions. So it's a pretty lengthy background information. Dave, is there a way to summarize it to kind of explain what's going on?
Let's see what I can do. Currently, there are 6 PC network technicians. What ISC is hoping to do, as they continue to modify how they run the department to go to more of a preventive maintenance model, is to take one of those technicians and to give them some additional responsibilities. The reason we are modifying it to PC Network Tech 2 versus the lead is that lead seems to imply a supervisory role, and that's not going to be the case. But they're going to have some additional responsibilities, some additional training that'll be required. They're going to be assisting and coordinating and working with the network coordinators and helping to prioritize and manage help desk tickets. And so because of those additional responsibilities, we were wanting to move that, create that new position, a reclass for one of those PC techs from column G to column H. And what that means, if my memory is right, is about $1.71 an hour extra.
Any questions for Dave?
So will this just be one of those existing 6 techs will get extra training and then one FTE will just?
That's correct. We're not going to increase the FTE to the department. We're simply going to reclass one of those people within that group, and they would be able to apply for that.
Okay, do you know, will they have to go out and get additional training to meet it? Maybe some of them already qualify?
Oh, that's a great question. My understanding is that they would provide the additional training to that individual.
Oh, okay, thanks.
I have a question, just one question, just to make sure. The fact that we're changing the length, or the title to PC Network Tech 2 from lead, doesn't affect that we're moving them from column G to column H. It just means that we're clarifying that they won't have supervisory obligations, but they will have.
Correct. We're just trying to make sure that we take the word lead out so we don't create some confusion down the line for people. And they recognize it's just a job with some additional responsibilities, but not supervisory.
Any other comments or questions? And this looks like it's elementary and secondary. Is there a motion to approve the reclassification of one PC Network Tech position to one PC Network Tech 2 position? Moved by trustee Wake, seconded by trustee Smith and Newbold. Any board discussion? I'll just make one comment. It sounds like if you're trying to get ahead of the curve, and remind me the term you used about trying to get ahead of the new model of being.
Oh, what he's trying to do is to get to a preventive model.
Right.
Versus having to.
Reactive.
Reacting to fires. Instead of
Right.
putting out fires, plan ahead.
Yep, that seems like a really good idea, so.
Yes.
Any other board comment or discussion? Any public comment? Thanks.
Diane Anderson, MMCEO, Representative at Large. We're really encouraged by this model in that because what it does is it actually establishes a career ladder within our organization. It also allows for an easy flow between the different positions in that, which is really less cumbersome than having a new position in that. So we really like the direction this is headed. We think it's appropriate in that for a growth situation in that within Missoula County Public Schools, and we appreciate the effort of administration to do that.
Thank you. Any other public comment on this item? Seeing none, then all trustees in favor of approving the reclassification of one PC Network Tech position to one PC Network Tech 2 position, please indicate by raising your hand. That's all trustees present. And then at the end of each meeting, we provide the same opportunity that we do at the beginning of every meeting to provide public comment opportunities for non-agenda items. Is there any public comment on non-agenda item, or you had a public comment?
Happy Pi Day.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Any other public comment? Seeing none, as I indicated, we were going to go into executive session to deal with the grievance matter, but because of illness, we will reschedule that meeting, so the meeting is adjourned. Thank you for being here.